Welcome to Pay for Play, where we will be discussing whether or not college athletes should be paid. There's lots of debate on whether or not NCAA athletes should be paid. Though there are many reasons that they shouldn't be paid, there seems to be a lot more reasonable propositions that say they should be paid. The situation has always been and will always remain a topic of discussion in college sports, even if it were to come to the point where athletes are paid. Quite frankly, it seems as if the ones who are against athletes being paid don't see the points beyond the fact of playing sports at a collegiate level, and vice versa. The ones who are for athletes being paid don't see the points on why they're already privileged enough as it is. Through all of the debates and rebuttals of this specific topic, still stands the question: should college athletes be paid? The fact that the amount that the player is paid would be in addition to what their scholarships provide is a huge deal to those who are opposed to athletes being paid. According to John R. Thalen, if scholarships were to be taken out of the proposal to these athletes and only a salary was provided would not work out as an alternative. For the fact that this means these students will be forced to pay taxes, which would then backfire in the long run when they cannot afford to cover tuition. A very important point that has been made from the side opposed to is that paying student athletes would then change the nature of college athletics, being sure enough that it would be rather more of a bidding war for the athletes rather than athletes making the ultimate decision based on the program of each school. Dave Anderson makes a final closing point to the argument that despite all the talk, these athletes are not playing professionally. College athletics is merely just an extracurricular to pursuing a damn near free higher education that serves as the ultimate privilege itself. On the other end of the table, there are valid counteracting points as to why these students should be paid. First off, according to Forbes, the typical D1 football player dedicates nearly 43.3 hours a week to their sport. That is 3.3 more hours than a typical working American. The tournaments that these athletes participate in require them to miss class for these games that will then be nationally televised and bring in revenue for the program. If college athletes were to someday be paid, what would be the system behind that? Would it be based off of revenue generated from that particular sport distributed amongst the team? Would the student have an option to decline payment in exchange for the keeping of their scholarship to focus on earning a degree? Quite honestly, there are many college athletes today who do not plan on receiving a degree through the school they play for. Some of these athletes just go resort to college athletics because they cannot be drafted out of high school.
Should NCAA athletes be paid? Today I'm doing an interview with Juwan Rivers. And Juwan, what sport do you play?
I play basketball for Asbury University.
How long have you been playing and training to get to this level?
Technically, I'd say around the age 5 is when I started playing and training for the sport.
And how many hours of practice do you guys have each week?
Each week, between open gym and weights, I'd say probably about 15 hours.
And you guys are full time students on top of that. So, with all the practicing and class time and time outside of class doing homework, do you guys have time to get jobs so you could earn any money?
Definitely not with school and practice and um, with social time and the time that we need to rest. That's definitely not possible.
And since you guys can't get jobs to earn money, do you see you or your teammates often having to ask your family to send you guys money to get food or anything else you might need that the school doesn't already provide for you?
With my appetite, I definitely say I ask my parents every week for money for food and things like that.
So, with all the time you guys spend practicing and going to school and not being able to get any jobs, do you think it's important or these schools should give these athletes an allowance so that they have their own spending money and they're not always having to ask their parents or family members to send them money?
I definitely say yes because, to be honest, with all the things that we do on a daily basis, I feel like it's a regular 9 to 5 job.
All right, and these universities, I read an article and it was talking about how these universities gets tons of money from all of these athletes in different sports, and it's just growing each year with the amount of money they receive. So, do you think these programs can afford to give these allowances?
These programs can definitely afford, with all the money that the athletes are bringing in. When you see the new facilities and buildings and classrooms and TVs and everything else that they bring in, they could definitely pitch something.
And also in this article, they talked about how like these players that are skilled enough to go to the league, they get more attention drawn towards these schools, and they bring in even more money. And they're most likely to leave early and not use their 4-year scholarship that they may have. So, do you think the argument that a scholarship is enough compensation for all these athletes do you think that can stand alone, or do you think that's an invalid argument?
Um, Part of me says yes, it is enough because once you think about it, I mean, who doesn't want to go to school for free? And at the end of the day, if you go to school for free and you don't have anything to pay for it afterwards, I mean, you're still up. But then again, part of me says no, because with all the advertising the school does and everything else that happens for the player, well, for the school, but from the player, I mean, wouldn't you want a part of something that you were involved in?
So you mentioned advertising. I know that there was a lawsuit that they mentioned in this article that I keep going back to about a former player who filed a lawsuit against his university that he played for because they were using him in an advertisement after he had already left that school and they didn't compensate him in any way. Do you think that is wrong and that should be fixed? They shouldn't be allowed to continue to use these players that have left and maybe went to the NBA to get more attention and more money drawn into that school?
I'll say if the player has went to further his career in the NBA or whatever he might play, I'd definitely say yes, because at that point that player has a lot of value and that's part of what the school needs to keep doing what they do.
Okay, and going back to the current players, do you think by giving these players an allowance, we are technically paying these players to play? So do you think that would take away the amateur status?
Yes, but no. I mean, like I said, I relate basketball and everything that happens with being a basketball player as a 9-to-5 job. So, I mean, if regular students can go to work and still go to school, I mean, I believe it's the same thing
Okay.
when it comes to allowance.
Thank you.
So I'm here with Jack Hudson. He plays soccer here at UK. He's a goalkeeper here, so he can provide us with really good insight as to the student-athlete life and if they should get paid or not. So, Jack, how long have you trained to get here at UK?
I've been playing since I was like 3, and I kind of got the idea that I want to play college soccer and I don't know, probably early middle school. Yeah.
Okay.
So for a while now.
So how many hours a week do you practice here at UK?
Ooh, I don't.
You can include games and film and stuff.
It's something within. So we train about 2-3 hours a day. So I don't know, 20 hours a week, 20 hours, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So with classes and practice, are you able to have a job along with that?
No, not at all.
Okay. Are you on scholarship?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So since you're not on scholarship, do you ever find yourself unable to afford necessities like food or?
Yeah, well, it definitely comes out of pocket. It's difficult for me to convince my parents that I need money from week to week, or it's just hard. It's also a burden on on myself because I'm having them pay money for something that I want to do.
Yeah.
And I would like to get compensation because it's my life, not theirs. I'm starting to come to an age where I want to be financially independent.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Because I found an article. It's called "It's Time to Pay the Tab for America's College Athletes" by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You know who that is, right? The basketball player. Okay. So he even describes how he and some of his teammates, while at UCLA, pushing for a national championship every year, found it hard to feed themselves after games or practice. So I didn't really think that as much as your case, but in that article he talks about it a lot.
No, there are definitely a lot of insecure people here, like I think even at UK, there's just people who struggle to go day to day, finding meals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a really common problem. I mean, it might not be everybody, but it's there's a good portion of them.
So, with that being said, how student athletes can sometimes be put under stress when it comes to the financial situation, do you think that programs should be paying their players based off of like how much they earn, or should it be a flat, like spread across the board evenly, or do you not even think student athletes should get paid?
I don't know, because the idea of school and mixing it with a sport, it's just weird because like people go to school just to play the sport, and then like they mix it with the schoolwork, and like a lot of athletes don't want to do the schoolwork. So it's a tough situation. I think that it should not be it shouldn't be included within your tuition. It should just be they give you money, and whether or not you want to apply that to your tuition or not, like I don't know.
Because in the article by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he talks about how like even in March Madness, it's like $1 billion a month, and student athletes don't get anything at all.
Like funneling like money because they don't give you the ability to like take on sponsorships, and like some of these college athletes have like huge names. They're just making money off of these kids who are just like sold on the idea that you play for your school, and it's just ridiculous. It might not be the case for like smaller sports, but like for the larger ones like basketball and football, they're bringing in so much money, and it's just like the players aren't seeing any of it for like what they've been doing.
So to sum it up, like if you think like for football and basketball, you think they should get paid just because they make so much more money than other sports? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But I think also other sports, even like soccer, we like lose money with the school.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we should get paid, because if you don't have a following, then like what are we doing?
Yeah.
But
okay. Yeah, because Kareem talks about how, like, for example, he says the University of Texas made $92 million in profit in the 2015 year, and student athletes are getting note of that. So I just want to say thank you to Jack for sitting down and talking to me about his perspective on student athlete life here and whether or not student athletes should get paid.
no problem.
The biggest argument that I feel is a lot of times forgotten when discussing whether or not athletes should be paid is their attitude towards the sport they are playing. A great deal of the general population has heard of Zion Williamson, a basketball player at the University of Duke. Williamson injured his knee during a game, and this reignited the highly debated discussion of whether or not athletes should be paid. The biggest question brought up after Williamson injured his knee, according to Jeremy Engel, was, should Williamson ever suit up for another college game? The reason this is such a big question is because everyone knows he can play in the league and he will get drafted. So why should he risk millions of dollars playing in college where he won't make any money and risk getting injured and never making it to the NBA? This question brings up another important point I think that people fail to notice. A lot of these Division I athletes were never told the importance of a college education. These athletes go to college for one thing and one thing only, to make it to the league. Whether this be trying to get out of a less than ideal environment or provide for their family that may not be financially stable, making it to the top is their escape. These athletes put so much into their sports, not only affecting themselves individually, but also their families. Not being drafted into the league after getting so close is heartbreaking. Paying athletes may be able to help prevent and eliminate this issue. From here, I would like to discuss more minor yet still imperative reasons for why college athletes should be paid. Reasons such as these athletes are missing school for games, coaches being paid a significant amount, and players acting as advertisement. Madison Martinez says in an article discussing why athletes should be paid that the schedule of the NCAA tournaments require an extended period in which the student athletes must miss school. Not only do they miss class, but they are absent for nationally televised games that make a lot of money and receive millions of viewers. This is important because these athletes are supposed to be students first, yet they are required to miss class and are being used as free advertisement for the university. An example Martinez uses to show the impact these players has is the Flutie effect. According to Martinez, the Flutie effect is used to describe a surge in college admission following a big sports win. This example shows how these athletes are statistically bringing the campus more kids, which in turn brings in more money and publicity. Zion hurt his ankle less than a minute into a nationally televised game against their arch rival, North Carolina. Hundreds of thousands of people were watching the game, which shows the publicity these games bring in, as well as the importance of the health of these athletes. Had Zion hurt his ankle before this game, there could have been a lot smaller audience and a lot less attention to both schools. Even Zion hurting his ankle during the game could have caused individuals to stop watching. The other main point for why these athletes should be paid is because they're the ones putting their bodies on the line, yet their coaches are being paid for their effort. Sure, the coaches may have a significant effect on the team, but it's up to the players to actually get the job done. Meanwhile, coaches are being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars with no risk to their health. They even get bonuses for breaking records and winning big games, while the athletes who are actually on the field get none of it. All points for why college athletes should be paid are significant to the argument, but I feel these are the points that are often overlooked when discussing the issue. I hope to bring light to these lesser talked about issues in order to get these athletes what they deserve. Again, my name is Jax Geist, and I would like to thank you for listening to my part of the video.
Hello, my name is Connor Ashton, and for my episode, I'll be talking about why I'm pro college athletes being paid. There are many sides to this argument, but I'd like to fully address why they should be paid from my eyes. To begin, every college athlete has the mindset of making it to the next level. Their motivation consists of continuing the sport they love and, of course, the money aspect. Making millions of dollars is what we love to do. Mentioned in the article I came across, it read, "It doesn't make much sense for them to see monetary gain from what they are potentially going to be doing for a living," mentioned by author Brooks. What he is getting at here is that they want some type of motivation to achieve their goal of the next level. This brings me to my next point. For many years, sports have been blowing up across the nation, and colleges themselves are benefiting from this. Financially, the colleges are making all of the money brought in, and athletes definitely deserve a portion of this. Without the exciting atmosphere and hard work the players bring to the big stage, college athletes would be non-existent. Another point brought up in this article is how much the head coaches are making. Coaching is a big part of sports, but a coach would be nothing without his players. For example, Nick Saban, the coach of the Alabama football team, is making $11 million a season. He's not the only reason their team is so talented, and players should at least get some type of income from the NCAA. From the coach's perspective, most of them support the cause of giving the team's salary to individual players, and even the money brought into the school itself. Another aspect of this argument is that sports have become dangerous, and that alone should be a reason these athletes should be getting paid. A career-ending injury could ruin their whole future plans, and all that hard work just goes out the door. A final point made by Brooks is that according to a 2011 survey, many students average 30 hours of practice a week, while some spend over 40. When you combine that amount of time with the time spent in classes and the time spent doing homework, it's practically impossible for them to find time to work a part-time job to earn spending money. This could have been said any better, and the average college athlete is putting their all into it and should be rewarded properly. Continuing with this point, college athletes are simply not having the opportunity that they deserve. With the lack of time for a job, college athletes should be gaining income from their second job. Mentioned in this article, college athletes were spending 30 to 40 hours a week for their sport. This is almost equivalent to a full-time job today. And on top of that, they still have their number one priority, which is school. With all of that being said, college athletes should be able to sign endorsements and market themselves. They should be able to put themselves out there and gain income from these advertisements. Overall, this would benefit the company if they were to sign with one and the player itself. Money today is a huge problem for many people across the country, and any opportunity people have to make an extra buck should be taken. Having an endorsement with a shoe company, for say, would benefit the player, the school, the brand of shoe they are wearing, and it's just a win-win for everybody. From athletes receiving money, this would help them with life tasks such as handling money. Lombardo states, college athletes aren't usually known for their financial savvy. When players go straight from college to making millions of dollars, they do not know how to manage it correctly. A huge majority of professional sports players go completely broke within years of their retirement. By paying them during their college days, they begin to learn and understand how to manage money and avoid these same mistakes. From his perspective, he's looking out for the future of these professional athletes. Sports are a career for some, but learning the way life is so much more important than just a game. Thanks for listening to my episode, and feel free to ask any questions.
Cool. Okay, so I think after interviewing Jack and then reading about it online, I just think student athletes should be getting paid. First of all, they devote so much time to training and games and all that. They don't really have time to get an extra job and pay for any extra expenses. And then in many cases, there's a lot of student athletes who aren't on scholarship just due to the nature of the sport. So, for example, soccer is it's not a full ride for everybody, and football it is. So, if student athletes in soccer could get paid, then that would help them out a lot. But in football, they bring in so much money. I just think it would be fair for the players to actually get paid. Where their coaches making multi-million-dollar contract deals and everything like that. And then I also think there's a lot of athletes who come from a harder background back home. They're not really able to get money from their parents, or it's just not there available for them. So I just think it would help everyone involved, the student athletes, to get paid.
And from my episodes, my first main point was that it's a full-time job. It's simply not a hobby. It's something that requires 100% of effort and time and dedication from these athletes. Another point I focused on was that the players are putting it all on the line. It's either go all in or you're not going to make it. And then finally, I brought up that they're bringing in so much money towards the sports programs and the schools that athletes should be making a portion of this because of their hard time and bringing in all this money to the schools.
I also think athletes should be paid. I think one of the big points that a lot of people miss is that these athletes a lot of times go to college to make it to the next level, and it's their only way out. Their parents, a lot of ours, don't tell us how important a college education is, so they're going there to get out of a less than ideal situation, whether that be a bad living environment or their family's not financially stable. Making it to the professional level might be the only way for them to get out of those bad situations. These coaches are also getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars while these kids aren't seeing any of it, while they're the ones risking their health on the field and their livelihood as well, because if they get hurt in college and don't make it to the league, then they may not be able to support their families.
I also believe that college athletes should be paid, and one main point that whenever this topic's brought up is people just assume that their scholarship is a huge part in compensation, but with the scholarship, they're going to school for free and they don't have student loans or be paying and creating debt for their education, but also with the amount of time that they spend, they're going to school for free, but they also need money to buy food or anything that they might need that the school doesn't provide for them. Although these programs do provide a lot, they don't provide everything that these kids might need.
Another reason athletes should be paid during college is that it would help them prepare for further life and future goals after their professional sports. And college students aren't usually known for handling their money pretty well because some athletes